Hello, thank you all for coming. What I want to talk to you about today is the ways that we engage school audiences. We use visual literacy to engage our school audiences. And as Mike said to you all, we do that largely through our Docent program. So before I get started, I just want to give you a snapshot of the very robust and vibrant Docent program that we are blessed to have here at the museum. We have approximately 115 active volunteer docents who dedicate their time to the museum. And in the past calendar year, those docents have led over 1,000 school tours for over 11,000 students. So it's really a very vibrant and active program. And within that context of those 1,000 tours, many of them break down into a large range of different tour programs. Generally, broadly across these programs, visual literacy is a part of the docent approach across all of these programs. For many of them, this approach is individual, and it kind of varies from docent to docent and from program to program. But a couple of the programs really stand out in that they really lend themselves to taking a more systematic, more intentional approach to applying visual literacy. And those three programs are the ones that I want to tell you about this afternoon. They're our Passports program, our Art of Reading program, and our WordShop program. So the first program I want to tell you about, well, before that, let me tell you, across all of the programs, there is no one-size-fits-all model for incorporating visual literacy. We have a set of activities that we've developed, about a dozen activities we've developed for the museum, but for each audience, for each program, we've taken this slate of activities and we've adapted it to the audience, to the message. So when we think about our activities, the thing that unifies them all is that they are all going to work on building close-looking skills in students. They're going to help develop vocabulary acquisition and description skills, and they're going to foster critical thinking and 21st century skills. But you're going to see that happen differently in each of the three examples I'm going to present for you. So the first example is our Art of Reading program. This is a program that the museum hosts for over 600 kindergarten students who come from Toledo Public, Oregon local, parochial, and charter schools in the area. Over 80% of these schools are Title I schools, and they are coming because of a generous endowment of the museum is able to bring them free. Both the program and the transportation are paid by the museum. The Art of Reading tours, or what does visual literacy look like in an Art of Reading tour? This is an hour-long engagement for kindergarten students. It starts in a classroom. The docent reads a story book, a picture book with the day's theme. Our themes for the Art of Reading tours are, they choose one of the elements of art or principles of design, and that is the focus for the entire hour. So the hour starts by reading a storybook. In here, on my last slide, we had a picture of the docent with the students reading the story. The docent introduces the vocabulary, and then they head up into the galleries. But the gallery engagement is really where we get into the visual literacy activities. And they're multisensory activities. The example we have here is from the shape-themed tour. The docent brings a burlap bag, and it's filled with all of these foam shapes, squares and circles and triangles. And the students reach into the shape. They can't see it, so they use their sense of touch to decide which shape they're holding, guess the shape, pull it out, and then they find the shape in the work of art that they're discussing. Within one of these tours, the docents generally do 3 to 4 different multisensory activities to engage the students with the works of art. Now going from kindergarten audiences to kind of the other extreme, to the middle school audience, 6th and 7th grade audience, we have a program that we call Passports. Passports is a multi-visit program in that the classes are committed to coming to the museum 7 times over the course of 2 years. In addition to those 7 90-minute museum visits, the docents also go out to the classroom at the beginning of each year and do a 45-minute program in the classroom. And the teachers come to the museum in advance of the school year for a professional development and planning workshop. And I want to note that the teachers do this on their own time. They're not paid to come. They volunteer to come and work with us for the program. Passports is, at its core, a content-based program. Passports was developed to tie into 6th and 7th grade social studies curriculum, which is looking at ancient civilizations all the way up through the Renaissance and Reformation. So the way that we use visual literacy in 6th and 7th grade is going to, of course, be very different than how we're going to do it with kindergartners, right? The content of the kindergarten tour is the elements and principles, which is visual literacy. The content in Passports is Egypt and the Renaissance, right? So we use the visual literacy activities to deepen the engagement the student has to help them think about that content area. So those activities, they, again, just like with the art of reading, they're multimodal. So some of the activities are writing activities. We do drawing in the gallery. We have sensory touch activities. And we do some small group work as well. In the example you can see in the image, this is a docent working with an activity using some of the objects in our touch collection. So it's a rare opportunity for the students to get to touch during the museum experience. It's also an activity that each student gets a question about an object that came from or is used by that culture to help deepen their thinking about material culture in this particular example in the Egyptian period. And the third program that I want to tell you about is our WordShop program. WordShop is a multi-visit program. It's a partnership of the museum and the Women's Initiative of the United Way. And it's a multi-visit program in a very different way because we have 3 partner schools that the United Way has identified. And those schools have actually committed to bring every class in grades 3 through 8 to the museum once a year. So in theory, a student that starts in 3rd grade with WordShop, by the time they finish 8th grade, will have come and had the WordShop experience 6 times, year after year after year. Also, WordShop is very unique in that the tour is not the entire program. So the students come for an extended field trip experience, the tour, docent-led tour part of which is only 1 hour. So the way that the WordShop day works is the student comes for an hour for a tour up in the gallery. They come downstairs, they have lunch, and then volunteers from the United Way lead a creative writing workshop with the students. And the students all leave the experience with personalized individual stories that they've written as a group and illustrated as a group to take home with them. And then they write the ending at home. But so when we think about WordShop and we think about visual literacy, this is really a skills-based approach. So we don't have a set of content that we're trying to deliver, but we're really looking at the ways that visual literacy and textual literacy interlock and support each other. And working with the representatives from the United Way, we've really identified observation, description, analysis, and interpretation as common themes which connect both the visual and textual literacy experience. So, for example, if you look at the image, this is an example of a 6th grade WordShop tour, one of the activities that they do. And we call this activity Write a Record and Response. It's a drawing activity, and the students are asked, they're taken to a gallery, and they're asked to choose a work of art within the gallery that interests them. And they're told that they're going to explore that work of art really thinking about setting. And they're given a worksheet, and on the worksheet there's 3 blank squares. And they're asked to pick a detail of 3 details of the work of art to sketch the details. So observation, really looking closely in order to make the drawing. The next step of the exercise is labeling their drawing. We ask them to identify the elements of art that they see manifest in that small detail of the work of art. So description, right? And then the 3rd step of the exercise is for the student to think about how those details and those elements speak to the larger context of setting. How do they work together to build a story of setting, analysis, and interpretation? And then the idea is that they take this experience of diving deeply into these areas, and then when they go back and do the writing activities in the classroom, they can draw on the vocabulary they've been practicing and utilize the skills in their writing experience. So successes and challenges. We have the tremendous problem with all three of these programs that demand far exceeds our capacity to hold more tours. In every one of these programs, I have more teachers wanting to participate than I have time in the day or galleries to put the students in, which is a great problem to have. So I think that that speaks well for the programs, for the enthusiasm and the engagement that we're getting with the students, with the teachers, and also, you know, with the docents. With the Passports program, we're really in our first year of incorporating the visual literacy activities, and we're thinking through the ways that we're customizing the activities to help support the content. And the docents are a really big part of that for us. So we have basic lesson plans that they work from, but we're encouraging them to think creatively about the activities, and then we actually meet after each tour cycle to evaluate what went well, with the idea of establishing best practices moving forward. Challenges: the visual literacy approach is more resource intensive for us than the traditional gallery-based discussion approach. It's going to require more staff time, more docent time, more preparation, and also just all of the supplies for the material. But it's not just dedication and resources on our end. When you're thinking about multi-visit tours, you're really thinking about dedication on the part of the schools and the teachers as well. You know, I'm especially thinking about Passports here, where these teachers have committed to, I mean, when you add 7 tours up over the course of 2 years, that's a significant amount of classroom time that the teachers have decided that our program is worth it for them to get the students out of the classroom. So again, you know, there are a significant amount of resources, but I think that the enthusiasm we're seeing really shows that the teachers involved think that it's worth the effort. So from the school tours, I want to invite my colleague, Regina Jankowski, to tell you more about family programs.
Thanks, Kate. My name is Regina, and I run the Family Center here at the Toledo Museum of Art. And the Family Center is where we use visual literacy to engage our youngest of visitors. We have as young as babies painting for the first time, all the way up through early childhood ages, and I like to say all the way up. So the Family Center, we are open 4 days a week. We're open on Tuesday and Thursday from 10 o'clock until 3. We're open on Friday, 3:30 to 8, and on Sundays, 12 to 5. And the purpose and the goal of the Family Center is to provide early learning experiences for families. So parents come with their children. It's a family experience, and it's a way to encourage family participation, and it engages families to interact together in a museum setting. On any given day, we can have as many as, I would say an average day, 50 to 60 families come into the Family Center. On a very busy day, usually during the summer, or especially when schools are off on vacation, we can have as many as 200 families in the Family Center. And what we have is we have 2 rooms. We have an interactive play space and an art studio space, and they're connected, and parents stay with their children. It's a drop-in facility, not a drop-off facility. So sometimes that happens. So in coming through one doorway, we have an interactive play space, and this encourages families to be creative together with games and puzzles. And we have these interactive wall features that promote visual literacy and multisensory learning. We have like a shape wall with a Legos space, texture wall, line, a color wheel that spins. We have a new IDEM table that is really fun for the children to interact with, a computer table. And we have things like dress up and games and puzzles. And these are ways that families can interact together. In a way, we also have at each station or in each area, we have parent prompts. Not every parent might not know what kind of open-ended questions to ask when they're playing with their children. And it's kind of a nice way to encourage interaction with parents and children. This is an example of one of our interactive hands-on multisensory learning. We have images of works of art in our collection, and the children can actually touch these things. And, so they're multisensory experiences. And that's another way we all know that children learn best, when they not just hands-on, minds-on, and also when they can use all of their senses in learning. So this is a way that children can interact with those. And then we also have on the side where parents can find that work of art up into the galleries. We also have a baby and toddler area in the interactive play space. And this encourages little ones. I mean, we have a little one right here who's playing with the texture blocks. We have a light table. We all know the importance of early learning, especially with children. They say research shows from 0 to 4 months, the brain is developing so fast and just picking up on that sensory stimuli. And so this is a really nice way that parents can work together with their children with the different things that we have in the play space. Then through an open doorway, we have the art studio space. And we have, we have several large tables and easels provided for painting. And as you can see, we get messy in the Family Center. And actually, that's one of the things I think that's really nice about what we do, is the fact that parents don't want to necessarily play with foam paint on a carpeted living room floor. Well, you can come to the Family Center, and that's where you can get messy and create, and another hands-on sensory way that children can use the materials. Everything that we use is non-toxic and washable, so that's always a plus as well. But the activities that we have in the art studio space, they directly relate to a work of art, a special exhibition, or part of our permanent collection. So it's also a nice way that they can go up into the galleries and look at the work of art, and then come down and create something that's a direct connection to what they just saw. And then you can see, like this one is I don't know if you've seen the Marisol that's up in the Wolf Gallery. Those are her little representations of her Marisol party, her party that she created. And then we also have interactive gallery activities. When I first started in the Family Center 13 years ago, I noticed that families would come in the closest door to the Family Center, stay in the Family Center, and then leave the closest exit. They didn't feel comfortable, or even they might not have even been aware that they could take a 2-year-old up into the galleries. So we developed story time. And that's as simple as, during our open hours, we have story time Tuesdays and Thursdays at 11:30. We make a short announcement asking if anyone would be interested in going up into the galleries. It's a choice. We read a very short story in front of a work of art. And then it also is an opportunity for the families to see what else, that they can stay up in the galleries and look around. And then we also have family time tours. And that we take usually a multisensory kind of approach to that, where, for example, we just went up and looked at works of art with thunderstorms. So we took a thunder drum up into the galleries, and we were looking and searching through the galleries for works of art that had thunder and lightning in them. We also have a program in the Family Center where we invite a guest local artist to the Family Center the last Friday of every month. This is Leslie Adams. And she just actually, it was not predetermined. She picked a child who was there in the Family Center, had her model, and then she did a drawing. And it was really interesting, and the parents loved it just as much as the children, although she looks like she's kind of tired of modeling. She was a little squirmy. But the finished product turned out really well. And that actually I have a lot of friends who are artists, and I noticed a lot of families who were coming to the Family Center where some of the parents were artists. So I thought of, well, would you be interested in coming to the Family Center and talking to the families about what you do? And they come for free, and it's for an hour, but you should see it's great participation with the families, and it's great for the artists too. We also have a daycare program. We don't have a daycare in the museum. It's a program for area daycares and preschoolers to come to the museum. What I noticed when I first started working here is on any given summer day, when we're busy just with regular family center visitors, we would have one preschool that would come with one teacher and 30 kids when we're already busy with 50 families. So it got a little out of hand, so then we opened up on Wednesday so that it's more structured. They have to register, call ahead, and we focus on early learning and pre-literacy, critical thinking skills, problem solving, and all the things that we do in that program align with the curriculum standards. Where we meet in the interactive play space, we talk about a topic, maybe it's color or shape that day. We go up into the galleries and look for a work of art that directly connects, and then we come down and do an art making or art studio portion. And they also get a book that relates to the work of art that we talked about, and that they can take back to their daycare or preschool for their library. Another program that we have is Adelante, and it's a program that's been very successful. Adelante is a Latino social service organization here in Toledo, and these are families, and it's the first Wednesday and first Friday of every month. And these are families who English is a second language, so they're Spanish speaking. And I was quite nervous when I was approached to do this program because I don't speak Spanish, and so I wasn't sure how this was going to work, but it actually is perfect. They come with an interpreter, and it's a language immersion program. So we work together with Adelante, and the families are learning to speak English, and this is a great opportunity. They come together as a group, and we do the same thing similar to the Daycare Wednesday program that we have. We look at focus on like perhaps color or shape. Then we go up into the galleries and look at a work of art or part of the collection that relates to that, and then we come down and create something. And this is a really cute, he's doing a still life of the sunflowers. So that's Jonathan, who's now 12. That's one thing about working here for a long period of time. You get to see the children come back, and I still think they're 4 and they're like 14. And actually, that's a perfect segue. One of the things that I love about what I do is we get to see multi-generations of families come. So this is a little boy who is painting for the first time. And as you can see, usually first-time painters, they get a little bit on their face, sometimes in their hair, sometimes it goes in their mouth. And I could tell that it was a first painting because you can just tell, and it's really sweet, and that's one of the most rewarding parts of my job, and that's why I love what I do. And I asked the grandmother, would you like a photo? She didn't have her camera. And she looked at me and she said, I would love to send it to his mom. And then she told me a story. She said, I took her here to the family center when she was little, and now I'm taking him. And I just thought it came full circle. And I just think that's wonderful. And it couldn't be done without the generous support of not just the general operating budget and the museum support, but we are also sponsored by the Andersons and also grants. So I will leave this to Gennifer Bandeen, who's in charge of outreach.
Thank you, Regina. All right. So Mike talked about earlier when he introduced our session, talking about visual literacy and different ways of interpreting. And I'm going to stick with that through my presentation. Basically, my main form of interpretation is through art creation, through studio sessions. My background is as a visual artist. How many visual artists are in the room? Okay, you can relate to this as you look at things in the collection or look at things in the art world and how it informs your own art making. So I have 2 audiences that I mainly cover. I'm in charge of 3 different things here at the museum. One is our Outreach program, which serves people in underserved populations, people with special needs, people who are incarcerated, just a variety of populations. And then also we have our Art After School program, which is an opportunity for our neighboring children, students of ages between 5 and 18, to come to the museum. And I'm also in charge of our community gallery, and I'll get to that in a little bit later. But the first thing I want to look at is, so how do we do this? You've heard throughout this conference, I'm sure many of the things that you've heard I'm going to probably be repeating, but let's take a look at one of the things that we do with some of our subsidized housing right here across the street from the museum. This is one of the activities that we did with them. They are actually in a pilot program that we have where they 1 month come and have a docent discussion up in the galleries, and then the next month I go over and do an art making workshop based upon what they learned the month prior. So here in the gallery we're in front of Faith Ringgold's Ben piece, and of course that question that we all know by now, what do you see, was first asked. And as they started discussing what they saw, you know, I see liquor, I see coins, I see pins, and they started describing Ben's outfit. They started asking us questions and asking their peers questions, and it was a very informative gallery talk. What do his tattered shoes symbolize to you? What do his pins say? What kind of nonverbal communication is he speaking through what he's wearing? And that got us into a very neat conversation about personal symbols. And so we went from Ben and we went directly to our Netsuke collection, Netsuke being these little things over here that were worn on the top of Japanese inro, which were the men's purses and how they carried things around. These were very personal symbols. Some of them were, you know, monsterish type mask, what we would consider. Some were cute little bunnies. I mean, they all had symbolic meanings, but they're very varied in their appearance, as our, like, think of our tie clips or our earrings. You kind of wear who you are, and that speaks something about you. It's very symbolic language. So they really connected with the idea of symbolic language, and they started sketching them in the gallery. And when I went back to their location, you can see this woman right here. She did create one almost directly related to one of our own Netsuke because she sketched it in the gallery, and that informed her art making. My buddy Leon up there, he created one that he was very inspired by, and we talked about make it your own. Why do you have a personal connection to this piece? And we talked again about what you've been hearing, bringing your own memory, your own context into everything that you create. Okay, and that was very important in this discussion, and they were very pleased with their Netsuke that we made with Sculpey clay. So if you are a visual artist, you've probably gone through an art class where they plop a plant in front of you, and you have 10 different people around you, and they say, draw this plant. I hated those. But it's something where as you look at the results, they all appear quite different. So what would happen if we removed the visual, if we took away the thing that you were asking you to draw, and all I did was give you step-by-step verbal instructions? Would then the results all be different, or would they all be the same? Well, we kind of tried that experiment on a group from a local homeless shelter, and I kind of gave them the color palette of like 35 pastels, and I said, what represents summer to you? And then we gave them watercolors and said, what represents winter to you? So they each had their own palette. And then we said, okay, so I need you to draw 4 lines that cross the page from one side to the other. Didn't tell them how to do it, didn't tell them how thick, didn't tell them where. Now I want you to draw 4 circles. 2 of those must connect to the lines. Okay, so they did that. After a series of instructions in this step-by-step, very formal instructions, all of their works ended up looking quite different. Okay, so again, that was that reiteration of how we bring our own personal interpretation to everything that we create. Doing something as a form of interpretation. So visual literacy. Some of you may have gone to our touch tour talk. I'm not sure if you were here for that, but what does visual literacy mean when you're blind? Okay, here's 2 of my friends. But let's take a look at Skylar. Skylar was not only born blind, but she was also born with cerebral palsy. And I was at the site center doing an art workshop with her. And what we first did was we started to use soft clay to create beads. And she was very engaged with the texture. So she was creating things with her hands, making the beads. And as those were hardening in the oven, we got out some wooden beads that had textures already in them, deep ridges, planes, surfaces that were unusual. And then we got out the scented markers. And we all had markers on our nose, including me, because we were deeply breathing in the colors. And so if she had green next to her and she liked green, then she would use the green to make her bead. And I'd say, this bead is green. And then she would smell it. So green to her was processed through her other senses, her touch, her smell, her hearing. That's how Skylar processes her vision. Okay, so you can still use visual literacy, you just turn it into that multisensory definition. There are places where I go that are off-site, so how do I use our fabulous collection to make these ties with people? How do we use visual literacy without using our collection? In this particular case, this was a group of 50 young children with juvenile diabetes. And we just happened to have our video game collection. I don't know if any of you saw that exhibition, but that was on at the time I went here. And so we talked about how there's art in video games. And of course, everyone was like, Minecraft, and naming their favorite video games. But I said, well, that's not the point. Let's talk about your own video games. What if you could make a fantasy video game? What would your video game be like? What would it look like? And so we used very loose materials, watercolor, clear glue, salt, and we created these abstract backgrounds, but the dialoguing was fantastic. People had their own planets named. They're like, I'm going to live on Zepton, and my person is going to... We just had the gamut of these stories that they created, bringing their own experiences to their interpretation of what their backgrounds were. Okay, so then that was Artreach. And then we also have our Art After School program. We run that much the same way, where the kids come here to the museum. We partner with about 15 different community partners that have established after-school programs already. Okay, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We have like Boys and Girls Club, Big Brothers Big Sisters. When this program started, it was called Tuesday Art After School. The program has grown so exponentially, we now have it running 4 days a week. So we utilize all of our studios, not only at the main museum, but we utilize our glass pavilion here and also our metals program. And we're hoping to have photography. I'm looking at Brian. Photography also for our Art After School kids. They go up into the gallery. They have a discussion with their teacher. They have that visual literacy discussion with her, and then I say her, we do have one gentleman, don't we, with them. And then they come back in and process that information through art making. We also have a goal in Art After School to get them exposed to as many working artists as we can. That's a museum-wide initiative working with artists, but we have made it a goal, a personal goal of Art After School. Regina is my co-supervisor. We want them to be exposed and have that cultural opportunity that these children may not have. So in this image, you'll see the wonderful Varjan Bogosian. We all loved him. He's a wonderful man, and he has his studio materials laid out. We had this interactive experience where our students were able to pick out whatever speaks to them, which items that really called out to them, and then create mini installations on these pedestals that were set up. In this particular case, Varjan was so enamored with the program, he let each of the children take home a piece. Normally they're not supposed to do that, but he really enjoyed the kids. Okay, so then let's make this full circle. How do we get the kids that I go out to, how do we get them here at the museum? How do we engage them? How do we continue partnering with them? This is where the community gallery comes in. When I started here 9 years ago, the community gallery was more of a venue for local artists. And we've kind of gone in a different direction as a museum initiative to not only showcase local artists, but also to use part of that wing for our outreach artwork and also for the Art After School kids. I have to tell you this story because it was pretty amazing. I did an outreach at the Juvenile Detention Center, so kids who are in lockup, and we did portraits, not these, but we did portraits based on our Modigliani painting. They turned out phenomenally. I told the girls that they were going to be displayed at the museum. They were very excited, but they couldn't come to see them. I had them on the wall for quite a while, and I ran into one of the girls, and her foster mother said, "We just left the Juvenile Detention Center. She didn't want to go home. She wanted to come to the museum first." And this was weeks after the activity. She just got released. So that made my heart sing. That was very important to me as a personal connection. But the final evaluation of these programs and of visual literacy as a whole is the engagement. That is what is important to us. Art is an emotional experience. It's something that's visceral. It's something that is connecting. And as you can see, two of my friends here had a wonderful time connecting with the art and what they did. So that is why we do what we do. Thank you.